So Mr B was actually my first ever case as a qualified social worker. Initially we had a referral from various agencies raising different concerns, varying in nature. Concerns around his deteriorating health, his accommodation. He was described as quite unkempt, a poorly man. He was struggling to look after his cat, and the pressure was on really to say that he needed alternative accommodation, and people felt that he needed to be in a care home as opposed to his own home. Well, the first time I met Mr B, he looked quite deflated. He didn't really speak much. He looked quite sad, if I'm honest. He had quite a long beard, he had long hair. He initially was quite reluctant to engage with me. He had a lot of support in the past from various services. When I sat down, I simply said, "How are you?" Use simple language, make it about the person. Strengths-based practice is key, really, in achieving positive outcomes for people. Just having that simple conversation, how are you? What's going on? Tell me what's going on. How do you see things at the moment? What does a good life look like to you? Tell me a bit about yourself. Just to start that conversation. So even though I had all of the information from previous agencies and I was mindful of that information, you need to start with the positives. You need to start with what the person feels, what the person wants. And he simply told me that he loved his cat. He didn't care about his health. He was refusing hospital admissions. He didn't like where he lived, but he didn't want to go anywhere else because he didn't want to leave the cat. And soon then you could see that his whole life revolved around Cassie the cat. And when you focused on what mattered to him and you focused on the cat, everything else around him almost solved itself because he felt better. His well-being was improving. And I think at that point in time, he was very much saying to me, "Isn't it funny, Luce, that people think that they can say to you what you need? Why are people telling me what I need? Why isn't anybody asking me what I want or how I see things or how I feel about things?" And I think when you make that shift, it just creates positive outcomes for people. And that's what it's all about, really, isn't it? It's about empowerment. If we go in and we have that preconceived idea of what people need, that won't achieve positive outcomes, and that's actually disempowering people. What we need to be doing is going in and having simple conversations with people about what matters to them. Well, he was a counsellor for 40 years, very intelligent man, very, very dry sense of humour, had full mental capacity regarding the risks of the situation that he was in. And obviously we have to respect people's rights to make unwise decisions in those circumstances. And I think giving him all the information that he needed and the advice and the advocacy, if you like, allowed him then to think outside of the box and think, actually, there's other options here. What else can I do? Where else can I go? And giving him those options of moving with the cat just opened new possibilities for him. And I think now that he's achieved the outcome of seeking alternative accommodation with the cat, that's now opened up new outcomes. So he's evolving, his life is improving in a way that he wouldn't have seen at the beginning of my involvement. It's been a long journey. It wasn't so easy in the beginning. I think the biggest barrier for me was the cat, simply because the cat absolutely hated me. So that was quite difficult in the beginning. Home visits were tricky. The cat didn't like anybody being around him, especially the paramedics, but especially me as well. So I did have many scratches and scrapes from the cat at the time. I think moving him was quite tricky as well with the cat. David was no issue whatsoever, but transporting the cat in my car was quite tricky. And I think David did say, it's quite strange, I've never seen a social worker wearing oven gloves before. So that was a new one for both of us, I think, at the time. We have come a long way, and I think the biggest part of this is that trusting relationship. It's just about spending time with people, getting to know them. And if you go in thinking you know what they need, it just creates that barrier straight away. They don't want to engage with you. And with David, I think investing that time in him in the beginning just created a really positive relationship. Because of the nature of Mr B's illness, he does have Parkinson's disease. So that is variable from time to time. He'll have periods of time where he experiences positive health. And the other side of that is that he'll have periods of time where he becomes very unwell, very unsteady, and he is in hospital for quite some time. So in terms of measuring his outcome, I don't think it's not linear. It's a roller coaster. And I think that's the nature of life, isn't it? Life isn't straightforward for anyone. And I think as a practitioner, it's important to be mindful of that. So even though we can see a remarkable difference in him now compared to the start of my involvement, that hasn't always been straightforward. So there would have been periods of the year where if we were to measure that outcome at a time where he was in hospital, it would seem that he was nowhere near in achieving his outcome. But the week later, and he could have been experiencing positive health, actually, if you looked at it then, you could see that he was well on his way. So I don't think it's as straightforward as to say we can measure outcomes at certain points. It's about the journey, isn't it? That's the whole point. It's the journey of him achieving his outcome. And it's personal to him. Things are quite settled, and he did say to me last week that he doesn't need me anymore, which is what we want, isn't it? That's what we want as social services. We want people to be empowered and make their own decisions about life and have that control. And the whole point of our involvement is that we help people to achieve their outcomes, and when they're achieved, we are no longer needed. Yes, he has told me that he doesn't need me anymore. He did laugh though, so that's fine.